This video is about how to do an orthogonal drawing of a shape, and we're going to be looking at this shape here. So this is going to be the front. An orthogonal view drawing, of course, are two-dimensional views, two-dimensional drawings of the front face, of the top face, and of a side face, in this case the left. So we're going to be doing that, and we're going to be doing it in first angle, which means that we're going to lay it out, that we're going to put the front on the top left of the page, the top is going to go below it, the left side is going to go to the right. Okay? And we show that, if you ever see it on a drawing, it looks like this, which is a cut-off cone that's rotated onto its side. So to start with, I'm just going to do a rough sketch of what this is going to look like, and I'm going to say, well, my front view, I know it's basically a rectangular block with another rectangle cut out of it. So I'm going to do that by laying out some construction lines. Those are my horizontal ones. I'm going to have some coming down, and then I'm going to do my darker lines. So this is my basic rectangular shape. This is the bit that's been cut out. So I'm going to come down, my front view is going to look something like that. My top view, all I look down is I have a basic rectangular shape with two surfaces. So I'm going to put up a horizontal construction line here and there, and that gives me my basic rectangular shape, like that, with a line there to represent this surface here. My side view, when I look down on it, again, it's basically a square or rectangular sort of shape, and again a line in there. So I'm going to set out a rectangle, and that gives me everything I need, because there's my basic outline and a line across which represents this surface here that we're seeing. And those are the three views that we're going to do on the orthogonal drawing. And you'll see that I've laid it out in this way. This is the way we're going to be doing it, with a front, a top, a left, and some space in between. So when you come to your drawing paper underneath here, what we're going to do is again lay it out. We need to do some spacing. So on this drawing paper, I'm actually going to put two dividing lines. I'm going to put a vertical one down here and a horizontal one across there. And I'm going to have to make sure that I've got a bit of space around the shape all the way, just so that it fits inside the border of the drawing paper. And I'm going to decide that I want that to be 10 millimeters, and this to be 10 millimeters, and this to be 10 millimeters minimum, and this to be 10 millimeters minimum. Okay, it might be more. These are going to be exactly 10. 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, 10 here. Okay, so what that means to me is when I lay out my drawing, the first thing I have to do is make sure that it's going to fit. So I'm going to take my paper, and I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to measure, and I have 160 millimeters top to bottom between this line and this line. I have 275 millimeters between the lines on the left and the right. My shape has these dimensions. So when I measure along here, I've got 90 millimeters. When I measure up here, it's 40. This dimension here is 50. This one along here is 40. This dimension up here is 20 and 20, and it is 35 millimeters thick. So there's 35 there. So I have to make sure that this is going to fit onto the paper. So let's add them up. I start with 160 millimeters. I know I want a minimum of 10 here, 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 and here. That's 40. So I've got 160 to start with. I have to subtract 40. That equals 120 millimeters. That's how much space I have to fit the shape into. Now I know that this height here is 40, and I know that this shape here is 35. Added up, that 40 plus 35 equals 75, and that 75 is less than 120 millimeters. So I can fit this shape in using a scale of 1 to 1. And a scale of 1 to 1 means that 1 millimeter measured on the shape and 1 millimeter measured on the drawing is the same thing. If I had a bigger shape, I could use a scale perhaps of 1 to 10, where every millimeter here on the paper would represent 10 millimeters on the shape, and the shape would then be 10 times bigger. So far we've checked that it will fit in the height. And the next thing that we've got to check is that it'll fit in across the width. Now I've got 275 across the width, so I've got 275. Again, I've got 10, 10, 10, and I've got a minimum of 10, so minus 40 equals 235. Here I have a length, and if you remember, this dimension here is 90. This dimension across here is 35. So 90 plus 35 equals 125. That is less than 235. It fits still on a scale of 1 to 1. So my drawing fits and my scale is okay. The next thing I have to work out though is where to put these lines. Now I can just go and I can draw them in the center. And as it happens with this shape and this size, it would work. But what would happen if this was 100 millimeters tall? If I put this in the center firstly, I'm going to be measuring down 80 millimeters, and I'm going to be measuring 80 millimeters. So that means I'm putting my line across the center here, 80 millimeters above and 80 millimeters below. I've got to take off 10, I've got to take off at least 10, I've got 60 millimeters in the middle. Now 60 millimeters is bigger than 40, I don't have a problem. I have same 60 millimeters here, it's bigger than 35, I don't have a problem. I can put this in the center. But if this height was 100 millimeters, it would be bigger than my 60 millimeters. So to fit 100 millimeters in here, I would have to push this line downwards by 40 millimeters. Okay, and if I did that, I would find that this would have to shift down. I would suddenly have only 40 millimeters left here, not 80. I'd only have 20 millimeters. That actually wouldn't fit. And so I can only fit a drawing that here, if this is 10 and 35 and 10, that's 55. Out of 150, that's 105. I've got 10 above and below, so that's 85. The maximum height I can fit in here is 85 millimeters using a scale of 1 to 1. And I've got to push this down accordingly in order to fit it in. And the same would happen with the width. If this was particularly long and narrow, you would find that this line would be pushed to the left, or sorry, to the right. Okay, as it turns out, this shape is really nice. It fits easily. So I'm not going to do any adjustment of where my axes are. I'm just going to place them today pretty well in the center. But beware, you have to always check that it does fit in here. If this had got bigger, as I said, than 85, or bigger, as soon as this gets bigger than 60, I need to start shifting that line down. So what we're going to do is come over here to this drawing. And we're going to start by laying out those cross lines. So I said this was 160, I'm going to measure 80 millimeters and I want space of 10 millimeters above and below. And I'm going to draw that in with the T-square. So I'll put a dark line across the center, and then on these ones I put a lighter construction line. I can measure the center and I could offset it if I want. I've got 275. The middle of that is 137.5. I'm not going to fuss about the 2.5. I'm just going to mark 140. I'm going to mark 10 millimeters either side. Then I'm going to hold my T-square firmly against the left side of the board. I'm going to bring in a set square and put that onto my T-square, holding it firmly against my T-square. And I'm going to draw a vertical line through there. And I'm going to draw vertical construction lines through that dot on this side and that dot on this side. And the last thing I'm going to do is turn my set square and I'm going to draw a 45-degree line through there, and you will see me use that later. So that's my basic drawing set out. I have a scale of 1 to 1, and as I said, I'm going to be doing my front, my top and my left, which is why this area here, which isn't used, is where I put my 45-degree line. Now I need to start laying it out, and if you remember my dimensions, what we said is that the length here is 90 and the height is 40, and then this is 20 up and 20 up. This is 40 along and 50 along. So let's deal with the 90 and the 40 first. So I'm going to measure 90 millimeters, which is there, and I'm going to make a mark just over there. And I'm going to take my T-square and set square, and I'm going to draw a construction line top to bottom. And note, I go all the way down to the bottom. Next, I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to measure 40, which is over there. I'm going to take my T-square, and I'm going to draw a construction line all the way left to right. Okay, that's my basic rectangular shape. Now what I've got to do is this corner cutout. So I'm going to measure from here, I'm going to measure down 20, because that's how far down I said, and I'm going to measure from this side 40. So I'm going to measure 40 from here. I could equally measure 50 in from this direction here, because that's my dimensions. I've got 40 on this surface and 50 on this one. So that one there is 40, this one here is 50. So now I have a horizontal line going through there, that's my 20, and I have a vertical line going through there, both construction lines. Now I have enough information there to do my front view. I'm going to do all the horizontal lines first because it's a little easier, but I'm basically going to connect the points that have a surface attached to them. So those are my 3 horizontal lines. I'm going to bring up my set square, and I'm going to draw that and that one there. And that's my front view. And if you remember, that's what we drew in the first place. So now I need to do my top view. And because I've brought my construction lines all the way down, my measurements are already done. So this line, this distance here is 50, this distance here is 40, this distance from there to there is 90. All set. All I need to do now is put my ruler onto there, and I'm going to measure from this construction line there and make a mark that's 35 millimeters. And I'm going to put a construction line across the page. And there's my top view laid out. I have my basic rectangular shape around here, and I have my line across there. So bring in my T-square to do the horizontal lines, drawing from corner to corner of my construction lines, bring in my set square, and that's my top view complete. So we have front, we have top. If you have a look at our previous drawing, that's our top view. Now we need to do the left view. The left view is on the right side because we have rolled this over this way, as the top view is below because we have rolled it down. Now this, we need the thickness of the wood of 35, and I can bring a ruler and I can measure 35, but we know that with a square, this line of 45, this line from corner to corner is 45 degrees. So we can use that by putting this up here, because if this dimension here on a square is 35, then this dimension here is 35, and it is a square because a 45 degree line connects corner to corner. And that gives me my basic outline of my left view. I've got the basic rectangle here, 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 and here, and I've got the line here which represents that surface. So again, we bring in the T-square and we draw the horizontal lines. And we bring in the set square and we draw the vertical lines. And that's the drawing complete. So we have a first angle orthogonal drawing of this shape. It is done on a scale of 1 to 1, and these separation lines, these quadrant lines if you wish, are centered because the shape will fit in even with it centered. If the shape had been longer this way, we would have had to move this line to the right. If it had been taller this way, we would have had to move this line down. There was a limit on what we could do on either of these movements before we needed to go and increase the scale and change the scale. And that hopefully explains what you need to do to set up your drawing paper, to determine your scale, and to do an orthogonal drawing of a shape. Thank you.